The night started like nothing. Nothing special, nothing terrible. I had just finished drinks with a couple friends at a bar downtown, one of those moody places with exposed brick and overpriced cocktails. It was a Thursday, and honestly, I wasn't even planning to go out, but I let Mark talk me into it. Said I needed to shake the dust off, whatever that meant. It was close to midnight when I stepped outside and called an Uber. The wind had picked up, sharp and dry, and I was already regretting the denim jacket I'd stubbornly insisted was fine when I left my apartment. I stuffed my hands into the pockets and waited. That's when I saw the car pulling up. Black Toyota Camry. Tinted windows, clean. I climbed into the back seat without really looking at the driver. "You cold, or just stylishly stubborn?" The voice came from the front, low and calm, laced with amusement. I looked up. The driver was young, maybe late 20s, buzzed hair, warm brown skin, a slight stubble on his jaw. He wore a faded gray hoodie, sleeves pushed up to reveal tattooed forearms. His eyes flicked to mine in the mirror, and I could tell immediately. He was one of those people who didn't say much unless they meant it. I smirked. Little of both. He laughed under his breath. Fair enough. His name popped up on the app. Isaac. The next few minutes passed quietly. The hum of the car. The sound of city traffic thinning out behind us. I watched the lights blur through the raindrop-smeared window, my body slowly relaxing into the seat. "You heading home from work, or?" he asked casually. "From drinks," I replied. Work would have been less exhausting, honestly. He glanced in the mirror again. "Rough night?" "Not rough, just empty. You ever go out with people you like but still feel like you're not really there?" His eyes lingered on me in the mirror. Yeah, more than I'd like to admit. Something about the way he said that made me feel seen. Like he wasn't just making conversation. Like maybe, in some quiet, weird way, he got it. When we pulled up in front of my building, I hesitated before opening the door. "Thanks for the ride," I said. "No problem, Nate," he replied, glancing at the screen. "Get some rest." And just like that, the car pulled away, disappearing into the night. I didn't expect to think about him again, but I did, more than I wanted to. There was something in his voice, in the way he looked at me in the mirror. Something calm, safe, real. The next day was a blur. Meetings, emails, microwave leftovers. But around 10:30 p.m., as I was flipping through Netflix half distracted, I heard my phone buzz. "I'm outside." No name, just that. My heart skipped. I stood up, walked to the window, and there he was. Isaac. Same black Camry, engine idling softly under the streetlight. He'd come back. I stood there for a moment, behind the curtain, looking down at the street like maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But no, it was him. Same car. Same posture in the driver's seat. One hand on the wheel, the other resting casually by the gear shift. Head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something or thinking about whether this was a good idea. My heart thudded in my chest in a way that didn't make sense. I hadn't even known this guy 24 hours ago. I should have ignored the message, should have stayed in and gone to bed. But instead, I found myself grabbing my hoodie and sliding on my sneakers, walking out into the chilly night like I was in some movie I hadn't realized I was starring in. When I stepped out the front door, he looked up. The window rolled down halfway. "You came back," I said, instantly hating how breathless I sounded. He shrugged. "Didn't feel like going home yet. Thought maybe you didn't either." I didn't answer right away. "You don't have to get in," he added, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just figured I'd offer." I hesitated. Then, without saying anything, I walked around the car and got in the passenger seat this time. He glanced at me with a small smirk. "Upgraded to the front seat, huh?" "You earned it," I replied, pulling the seatbelt across my chest. He nodded once, then pulled off the curb and drove. We didn't say much for the first few blocks. The city was quieter than usual, that eerie calm that only hits after midnight. A few cars rolled past, headlights glinting off the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed faintly and then faded. Isaac drove, with the windows cracked slightly, letting in the cool air. The music was different this time, something instrumental and a little sad. Not quite depressing, but thoughtful. "You always drive this late?" I asked eventually. "Yeah," he said. "I pick up some extra hours after my shift, helps pay the bills, and it's easier to think when it's quiet." "You have another job?" "Daytime I work maintenance for an apartment complex in South Boston. Nights I drive. I guess I'm not really built for the 9-to-5 life." I looked at him sideways. "And you just felt like seeing me again?" He didn't answer right away. His fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel. "You seem like someone who could use a drive," he said finally. "And I don't really do this kind of thing. I don't pick people up twice. But I guess something about you stuck." I let that hang between us. Part of me wanted to ask more. The other part was scared of what I might hear. He turned onto a darker, quieter street lined with trees. Houses spaced far apart. The kind of street I didn't know existed in this part of the city. "You hungry?" he asked. I blinked. "Now?" He smiled. "There's a 24-hour diner about 5 minutes from here. Best grilled cheese and worst coffee you'll ever have." And just like that, we were pulling into a cracked parking lot, lit by a buzzing neon sign that just read EAT. The place was almost empty, just one guy reading a newspaper at the counter and a woman in scrubs nursing a cup of coffee in a booth near the window. We picked a booth in the corner, slid in across from each other. He ordered a grilled cheese and fries. I got the same. For a while, we talked about random things. Music, movies, how Boston drivers were a different species entirely. But then, it got quieter, a little more real. "You always been here?" I asked. "Boston?" "Pretty much," he said. "Born in Dorchester. Left for a while after high school, came back. Tried LA. Didn't stick." "Why not?" he shrugged. "Too much noise. Too many people pretending to be something. I missed the bullshit I already knew, if that makes sense." It did, more than I wanted to admit. "And you?" he asked. "What's your deal?" "My deal?" "You've got that vibe, like you're used to pretending everything's fine, even when it's not." I looked down at my plate. "That obvious?" He didn't push, just waited. "I don't know," I said after a moment. "Life's fine, Job's okay, friends are cool, but sometimes it all feels like background noise, like I'm watching it happen instead of living it." He studied me for a second, like he saw more than what I said. "I get that." We didn't talk much more after that. The food came, we ate, the fries were perfect. The coffee was exactly as bad as promised. On the drive back, he didn't ask where I lived. He already remembered. We pulled up in front of my building, and this time, neither of us moved right away. "Well?" I said, my hand hovering over the door handle. "Yeah," he echoed, but I didn't open the door. Instead, I turned toward him. "Why did you really come back?" He looked at me. Really looked. "I don't know," he said quietly. "I just wanted to." Something shifted in the air. I nodded, then opened the door slowly. As I stepped out, he reached across the console and grabbed something from the glove box, a folded piece of paper. He handed it to me without a word. When I got upstairs and unfolded it, I found a phone number. No name, just a note scribbled at the bottom. "If you can't sleep tomorrow either." I didn't text him the next day. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. I stared at that folded piece of paper on my kitchen counter more times than I'd like to admit, made coffee just to stand near it, checked my phone like it had something to say about the whole situation. But I didn't send anything. I told myself I didn't want to seem too eager, that it was just a weird little moment, nothing serious. Just a guy who gave me a ride and took me for diner food like we were in some indie movie, with zero budget and too much emotional subtext. But the truth was, I didn't text him because I was afraid of what would happen if I did. afraid that maybe he wouldn't respond. Or worse, that he would. By the time 10 p.m. rolled around again, I was pacing my apartment like an idiot. I hadn't eaten dinner, hadn't done anything remotely productive. I'd just been in my head all day, replaying every second of that drive, every glance in the mirror, every word he said at the diner. The way he'd handed me his number like it wasn't a big deal, even though it obviously was. At 10:17 p.m., I caved. I grabbed the note and punched the number into my phone. Then I just stared at the blinking cursor. Finally, I typed, "Can't sleep." Hit send. Regretted it instantly. But less than a minute later, the typing bubbles appeared. Then, "Be there in 10. I didn't even have time to overthink it. I threw on my hoodie, ran a hand through my hair that was definitely not doing what I wanted it to do, and by the time I got downstairs, his car was already pulling up. This time, he didn't even wait for me to get in. He got out. Isaac stood on the sidewalk, hands in his hoodie pocket, head tilted slightly like he was trying to read my thoughts again. He looked tired. Not bad tired, just real. The kind of tired you get when your brain won't shut up. "I was hoping you'd text," he said. "Yeah?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He nodded. "Didn't want to be the one to push it. Figured if you felt it too, you'd let me know." I didn't answer, just stepped a little closer. We were standing in the cold, the faint orange glow of the street lamp between us. "You want to drive?" he asked. "Or just be somewhere else?" "Honestly," I said, "anywhere but here." He nodded again and opened the passenger door for me. Once we were both inside, he didn't drive right away. Just sat there for a second, the engine humming softly. Then he said, "I've got a place." We ended up at a parking garage. Not what I expected, but somehow it made sense. Top floor, totally empty, with a perfect view of the skyline. It was quiet, still, and almost too open, like standing in a dream. He killed the engine, but left the battery on so we could listen to music. Some mellow playlist was already going. Soft vocals, echoing guitars, the kind of soundtrack that makes you feel things you didn't even know were sitting inside you. We sat in silence for a bit, both of us staring out at the lights, our breath visible in the cool air inside the car. "You always come up here?" I asked. "Sometimes," he said, "when I need to think." "Or not think," I nodded. "Feels like the kind of place where you can hear your own bullshit." He smirked at that. "Exactly." More silence, but not awkward. Just heavy. Finally, I said, "Why'd you give me your number?" He turned slightly toward me. "I liked talking to you. I don't meet a lot of people who make me feel like I'm not wasting my time." That hit harder than I expected. "You say that to all your passengers?" I tried to joke. "No," he said, dead serious. "Just you." That shut me up for a second. Then he added, "It felt easy with you. Like we didn't have to try." I swallowed. "Yeah, it did." Another pause. He looked down at his hands for a moment, then back up at me. "I don't know what this is," he said. "I'm not trying to make it something it's not. But if you want to see where it goes..." I didn't let him finish. I leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks and music swelling in the background. It was slow, tentative, careful. His lips were soft and still slightly cold from the air, and I felt him hesitate just for a second before kissing me back. But when he did, it changed everything. The tension that had been building for 2 nights finally cracked open, and what filled the space was warm and overwhelming and real. When we pulled back, neither of us said anything. We didn't have to. He reached over, took my hand, and laced his fingers through mine. And we just sat there, watching the city breathe beneath us. I didn't expect to stay the whole night in his car. But I did. Somewhere between the city lights flickering below us and the feel of his fingers still laced with mine, sleep found us both. Or maybe it wasn't sleep exactly. More like drifting in and out, leaning against each other in a way that was equal parts awkward and perfect. It was almost 5 in the morning when I finally stirred. My neck hurt, my legs were cramped, and I was vaguely aware of the sunrise creeping up behind the skyline. But none of that mattered because Isaac was still there. His head tilted back, eyes closed, breathing slow and steady like he hadn't slept that soundly in weeks. I didn't want to wake him. I didn't want the night to be over, but reality was already nudging at the edges. Emails, texts, my unbrushed teeth. Life, basically. And it felt like if I waited too long, this whole thing might dissolve with the daylight. So I shifted slightly, and his eyes opened. Slowly. Sleepy. But still warm. "Hey," he said, his voice raspy. "Hey." He looked around like he was trying to remember where he was, then glanced at me. "I didn't mean to fall asleep," he said. "Me neither." We sat there for a second, blinking the morning into focus. "You want to get breakfast?" he asked, rubbing a hand over his face. I smiled. "Yeah, as long as it's not that diner again." He laughed. Agreed. We ended up at this tiny hole-in-the-wall place just outside the city. More takeout counter than restaurant. A couple of older guys sat by the window reading the paper like it was still 1997, and a woman behind the counter poured coffee like it was a sport. It wasn't fancy, but the food was hot, and the coffee was strong. And Isaac looked different in the light, less mysterious, more human. Tired, sure, but there was a softness to him in the morning that hadn't been there the night before. His hoodie was wrinkled. His eyes had that just woke up squint. And when he smiled at something I said about the weird wallpaper in the place, it didn't feel cautious or guarded. It felt easy. He walked me back to my place after, parked on the street again like the first night. We stood on the sidewalk for a minute, not really sure what this was. "So," I said. "So," he echoed. I looked at him, trying to read what came next. "I'm not great at this," he admitted, scratching the back of his neck. "At what? Saying goodbye?" "No, at figuring out what things mean," I shrugged. "Maybe they don't have to mean anything right now." He looked relieved. "I'd like to see you again, though. Not just when you can't sleep." I smiled. "You asking me on a proper date?" "Maybe." "You free tomorrow night?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." He stepped forward, just slightly, and kissed me again. Quicker this time. A little more certain. Then he stepped back. "I'll text you," he said, and just like that, he got in his car and pulled away. I went inside, closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "I'll text you." 3 words. Normally I wouldn't believe them, but for some reason this time I did. But Isaac didn't text the next day, or the day after. And that's when everything started to unravel. At first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he lost his phone. Maybe work ran late, or his car broke down, or a family emergency happened, or I ran out of excuses by day 3. By then, the silence was loud, deafening even. It's strange how quickly you can go from feeling like you're part of something special to feeling like an idiot. The kind of idiot who falls too fast, trusts too easily, reads too much into a kiss in a parked car, and a promise that wasn't really a promise. I checked my phone more times than I care to admit, left the ringer on, even though I always kept it on vibrate. I didn't want to miss a single thing, even if that thing never came. He didn't call, he didn't text, and I didn't reach out either. I told myself I had pride, that if he wanted to disappear, I wouldn't go chasing after him. But honestly, it wasn't pride. It was fear. Fear that if I texted him and got no reply, it would make it real. Final. So I did nothing. I went back to work, I showed up for drinks with my friends, and pretended to laugh when they joked about bad Tinder dates. I told myself it was just a couple nights, just a weird blip in a very average life. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like something had cracked open and then sealed itself off before I even had a chance to look inside. Then, one night, about a week later, I got in an Uber after another half-hearted evening out, and it wasn't him. Of course it wasn't him. But still, I found myself watching the driver's hands, noting how different they were. Smaller, no tattoos. He didn't say much. No teasing jokes. No soft questions. just drove in silence, and I realized how badly I missed his silence. Isaac's silence. The kind that said more than words. When I got home, I opened my messages, hovered over his number. I didn't text, but I didn't delete it either. That was my line in the sand. I didn't expect to hear from him again. I was really trying to let it go. To fold it into that category of strange little connections that burn hot and fast and then vanish without warning. The ones you remember more vividly because of how quickly they disappeared. And then he texted me. 10 days later, no warning, no build-up, just, "Are you home?" I stared at the screen like it was some kind of prank. I even checked the number twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Then, "I'm outside." I walked to the window, and sure enough, there he was. Same black Camry, parked in the same spot, engine idling, like nothing had happened. Like we hadn't gone almost 2 weeks without a single word. I grabbed my keys and went down, not even knowing what I was going to say. When I opened the front door, he stepped out of the car. He looked rough, not in a messy way, but tired, drained. His hoodie was different, but his eyes were the same. Dark, careful, and a little sad. "I shouldn't have ghosted," he said immediately. "I know that." I crossed my arms, unsure how close I wanted to stand. "So why did you?" He exhaled, looked at the pavement, then back at me. "Because I liked you, more than I expected to, and that scared the shit out of me." I blinked. That wasn't the answer I was ready for. I thought if I pulled away fast enough, it'd go away. That if I made it a one-time thing, I wouldn't have to deal with what it meant. "And what does it mean?" I asked, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. He swallowed hard. That had been on autopilot for a long time, just driving, working, staying numb. Then you got in my car, and it felt like someone hit the brakes. I didn't know what to say. He took a step closer. "I'm not good at this," he said. "I don't have a blueprint for what it's supposed to look like. I've messed things up before, but I want to try, if you'll let me." I wanted to be angry, wanted to ask why I wasn't worth a simple text earlier, why it took him 10 days to grow a conscience. But instead, I looked at him, and I saw a guy who wasn't playing games. Just a man scared of feeling something real. And I'd be lying if I said I hadn't spent the last week hoping this would happen. So I stepped aside. "You want to come in?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, if that's okay." "It's okay." And just like that, Isaac came back into my life for the second time. This time, I wasn't sure if I'd let him leave again. We didn't sleep that night. I need to say that, because it matters. It wasn't that kind of reunion. He came upstairs, we sat on my couch, and we talked. Or more like, we hovered around the edge of talking, slowly peeling off layers of the silence that had built between us. I made tea, mostly because it gave me something to do with my hands. He sat with one knee drawn up on the couch, hoodie sleeves shoved halfway up his forearms, that same quiet posture like he was still figuring out if he was allowed to stay. "I wanted to come back sooner," he said finally. I didn't say anything. "But every time I pulled up the app to message you, I'd just sit there staring at the blank screen like I was trying to convince myself it was better if I didn't." "And was it?" I asked softly. He looked at me, jaw tight, eyes dark. "No," I nodded, sipping my tea, buying myself a second to decide how honest I wanted to be. 10 days is a long time," I said, "long enough to start thinking I made something up that wasn't real." Isaac didn't flinch. "It was real." I looked at him. "Then why treat it like it wasn't?" He didn't answer right away. He looked down at his hands instead, fingers threading and unthreading nervously. "I've never been in anything like that before," he said finally. "Something that felt like it could go somewhere. I didn't know how to sit with it. I panicked." "You could have said that." I didn't know how. We let the quiet settle. He wasn't a smooth talker. He wasn't charming in the way that made you forget things. He was real, rough-edged, and emotionally slow-moving, but honest. And somehow, that made it worse, because if he'd been some slick player, I could have written him off. But he wasn't. and I didn't want to write him off. "I'm not trying to make this some big thing," I said carefully. "I'm not asking for promises or labels. I want it to be real. Or not. I don't do halfway." He nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting for me to say that. "I don't want halfway either," he said. "That's the problem. I just don't know how to do this when it feels real." That's when I stood up. He looked up at me, confused, like maybe I was going to ask him to leave, but I just reached out and took his hand. "Then, let's learn." He let me pull him up. We didn't kiss, we didn't rush anything. He just stood there in my living room, holding my hand like it meant something, like he meant something. And for a while, that was enough. The days that followed were strange. Good strange. Tense strange. We started texting. Little things. Morning, you up? Messages. A song he thought I'd like. A photo of his toolbox after fixing a water heater in some tenant's apartment. It was domestic, in a weirdly accidental way. He came over again 2 nights later. We watched a movie, fell asleep on the couch, tangled up like we'd done it 100 times before. Nothing sexual, just sleep. Real, solid, breathing in sync sleep. And then there was Saturday. We were walking through a park, cold coffee in hand, just chatting about nothing in particular, when he said something that made me stop in my tracks. "My ex," he said, casually, like it wasn't a bomb. "Wasn't a guy," I blinked. "Okay." I didn't know how to bring that up. I don't talk about this kind of thing with anyone. You're kind of the first. I felt my stomach twist, not out of judgment, but because I could feel how hard it was for him to say that. "I'm not looking for a label," I said carefully, "and I'm not going to make you figure yours out before you're ready." He looked at me, eyes steady. "I don't need time to figure it out. I like you. That's what I know." I swallowed. "Okay, but," he added, "it's new, and I don't know what I'm doing, so if I mess up again, you will," I cut in. "And so will I." He smiled, small and grateful. And just like that, we kept walking. But not everything was easy, because liking someone doesn't cancel out the stuff they carry, and Isaac carried a lot. The way he flinched when his phone rang too late at night, the way he sometimes zoned out, jaw clenched like he was bracing for something, the way he looked like he didn't believe it when I touched his hand in public. He hadn't grown up with this, with being allowed to want this, and I hadn't grown up with someone who made me feel like I was worth the effort. So we were both learning. Slowly, painfully, honestly. And one night, maybe a week into whatever this thing was, I asked him a question I hadn't dared before. "What made you come back?" We were lying in my bed, clothes on, legs tangled, my head on his chest. He ran his fingers through my hair absently, then said, "Because the night I dropped you off the first time, I didn't want to let you go, but I wasn't ready to admit that yet. And now?" He paused. "I'm still scared," he said, "but I'd rather be scared next to you than safe alone." By the time Friday came, I felt like we were finally slipping into something steady. Not official. Not labeled. But consistent. Like we'd found a rhythm that felt right, even if it still wobbled sometimes. He'd text me in the morning. I'd send him a stupid meme during lunch. He'd call me while sitting in his car between Uber pickups, and sometimes I'd hear the background hum of traffic while we talked about nothing important. What to make for dinner, which Netflix doc he kept falling asleep halfway through, which tenants at his job were the biggest pains in the ass. It was normal, which is why I should have known something was off that night. He texted around 7. "Can I come by later?" I replied, "Of course. Everything okay?" No answer. Not right away. Not for over an hour. Then, "Yeah, just a long day." And when he finally did show up, he looked like something had kicked the air out of him. He didn't kiss me when I opened the door. Just stepped inside with a kind of heaviness I hadn't seen in him before. "You sure you're okay?" I asked as he sat down on the couch without even taking his shoes off. "Yeah," he said, running a hand through his hair. I had a weird day. I sat beside him. He didn't look at me. There was this guy the first picked up. Some suit, probably in his 50s. He started. We were just making small talk, and he asked if I had a girlfriend. I stayed quiet. And before I could even think about it, I said no, but I'm seeing someone. My stomach tightened. And he asked, "She nice?" And I said, without thinking, "He is." That's when he looked at me, and I saw it. This mix of pride and panic swimming just under the surface. Like saying it out loud had opened a door he wasn't sure he could close again. I didn't say anything, just reached over and took his hand. And the guy didn't care, Isaac continued. Didn't flinch, just nodded and said, "Good for you," like it was nothing, like it wasn't a big deal. He laughed then, a small, disbelieving sound. "That shouldn't have surprised me," he said. "But it did." I squeezed his hand. He looked at me again. "You ever say it out loud? Like to a stranger?" I nodded. "Yeah, first time was weird. Second time was easier. After a while, you stop bracing for a reaction." Isaac leaned back, exhaling slowly. I've spent so long not talking about it, not admitting anything, not even to myself if I'm being honest. "You don't owe anyone an explanation," I said. He turned his head toward me. "I know, but I think I owe me one." We sat in silence for a bit. Then he asked, "Can I sleep here tonight?" "Of course." "Even if I don't want to talk much?" "Especially then." He didn't even change out of his jeans. Just curled up on my bed, shoes off, hoodie still on. I slid in beside him, careful not to crowd him, but close enough to remind him he wasn't alone. For a while he just lay there, eyes on the ceiling, chest rising and falling slowly. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," he said quietly. "Like I'm going to wake up and realize I can't actually do this, that I'm not allowed to have this." I reached over, my hand resting lightly on his chest. "This isn't a test," I said. "You don't have to prove anything." He swallowed hard. "I don't want to lose this." "You're not going to." He finally turned to me, eyes dark and wide. "I'm falling for you," he said. "I know I move slow, and I get scared, and I've got a lot of shit in my head that I haven't sorted through. But when I'm with you, none of that feels as heavy." I blinked, heart stuttering in my chest. "You don't have to say anything back," he added quickly. "I just needed you to know." But I did. "I'm falling too," I said. "Probably have been since the first night you drove me home." He smiled. A real one this time. Not afraid, not holding back. And then he kissed me. Not rushed, not desperate. Just soft, certain, warm. When we finally pulled back, he tucked his head under my chin and exhaled like he hadn't taken a full breath all week. We fell asleep like that. And when I woke up, his arm was still around me. He was still there when I woke up. And not just in the still in the bed kind of way. Isaac was present. His arm draped across my stomach, his breath steady and warm against the back of my neck. His fingers twitched slightly in his sleep, like he was still holding on even unconscious. And it hit me then, how rare this was. Not just the feeling of waking up next to someone, but the weight of being wanted, even after the fear, even after the silence. I stayed still for a while, just breathing with him, matching my rhythm to his, letting myself believe that maybe this wasn't a temporary thing, that maybe, this time, I didn't have to flinch when it felt good. When he stirred, he didn't pull away. If anything, his arm tightened around me. "You're awake," he mumbled. "So are you," I said, smiling. He hummed low in his throat and buried his face against my shoulder. "Can we just stay here for like a year?" he said, voice muffled. "Minimum." We lay like that for a while before he rolled onto his back, hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. "I think I want to stop hiding," he said suddenly. I turned my head toward him. "I don't mean shouting it from rooftops or changing my Instagram bio," he went on. "I just mean not flinching when people assume something else. Not swallowing it when I want to say your name." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just let the weight of his words sit there between us, warm and wide and honest. "You're the first person I've liked like this in a long time," he said. "Same. I don't want to rush anything," he added. "But I also don't want to pretend this is casual when it's not." "I'm not casual about you," I said, surprising even myself with how fast the words came out. He turned his head and looked at me. Then he smiled. And that was it. That was the moment. The soft, unspectacular, quietly enormous moment when we stopped circling what this was and finally agreed we were in it, whatever it would turn out to be. 2 weeks later, I posted a photo on my Instagram story. Just a blurry pic of 2 coffee mugs side by side, captioned, "Same morning, same person." I didn't tag him. I didn't need to. That night, he reposted it. No words. Just a heart emoji and a black square. Our inside joke for something quiet that means more than it looks like. And from that point on, we were us. Not flashy, not perfect, but steady. He'd pick me up from work sometimes, even if I hadn't asked. We'd sit in his car and watch the rain bead on the windshield. He still drove for Uber sometimes, still liked the nighttime silence, but now I was part of that silence. Sometimes I'd ride with him on slow nights, just to be near him. We didn't rush into labels. We didn't move in right away. We still had moments where we had no clue what we were doing, but the fear that had lived in the back of his throat slowly faded. The silence didn't come back. Instead, there were texts like, "Made too much pasta. Fix that?" Or, "You still make the best tea." Or, my favorite, "I had a long day, but you make it better just being in it." Months later, we were lying in the same bed, same tangle of arms and breath and late-night warmth, when he whispered, "I'm glad I came back." I smiled against his chest. "I'm glad I got in the car.